My name is Samantha Stone, and at 59, I've learned that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one nobody notices. This lesson served me well the night everything changed, the night my daughter-in-law made the biggest mistake of her entitled life. It was a crisp October evening in suburban Chicago, and I was hosting our monthly family dinner. Not in my modest apartment, where I preferred to live quietly, but in the family house in Lincoln Park, a beautiful 4-bedroom home where I grew up and where my father still lived. I had secretly purchased this house 5 years ago when my father's finances became precarious after his second divorce. He didn't know I owned the house. To him, it was simply a lease-to-own deal with an anonymous investor, but the payments he made went directly into an account I controlled. The dining room was warm, filled with the smell of my grandmother's pot roast. I had set the table with my mother's fine china, not because it was a special occasion, but because I believed every meal should have a touch of elegance, even if no one else noticed. My son Lucas arrived first, as he always did, carrying a bottle of wine, and that apologetic smile he had worn since childhood whenever he knew he was about to disappoint me. At 34, he was still the gentle soul I had raised, but marriage had changed him in ways that broke my heart. "Hi, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek with a mechanical affection. "How was your week?" Before he could answer, the front door slammed open with enough force to rattle the pictures on the walls. And there she was, Rebecca Lynch, who had hyphenated her name because, in her words, "Lynch sounds so much more sophisticated than just Campbell." She swept into my house as if she owned it. At 28, Rebecca was undeniably beautiful in that Instagram-perfect way, requiring 2 hours of preparation and a team of stylists. Blonde hair, more expensive than most people's rent. A figure maintained by trainers I could never afford. But I had learned long ago that beauty means nothing if it's not backed by character. "Hi, Sam," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "We need to talk about Thanksgiving. Lucas's firm is hosting a dinner at the country club. Obviously, we can't miss it for some sad little gathering here." I smiled, continuing to arrange the silverware. "Of course, darling. Family comes first, doesn't it?" She missed the sarcasm completely, too busy checking her reflection in the china cabinet. "Exactly. You understand how important networking is for Lucas's career." What I understood was that Lucas's career had been just fine before he married a woman who measured success by zip codes and country club memberships. But I said nothing and kept setting the table, preparing for the real family dinner. At 78, my father was still charming in that silver fox way that had attracted countless women throughout his life. Too many women, as it turned out. He left my mother for his secretary when I was 25. A cliché so painful it still made my heart ache. Mom never recovered from that betrayal. Dad remarried twice after Mom passed, always to younger women who saw dollar signs in his pension and Social Security. His current wife, Sandra, was wife number 345, with fake everything and big dreams. They arrived fashionably late, as Sandra insisted they always should. "It's important to make an entrance," she once told me, as if my modest apartment was the Met Gala. "Sam, darling," Sandra purred, air-kissing me with lips so inflated they felt like plastic against my cheek. "You look comfortable." It was her way of saying I looked poor, which, I suppose, I did. I shopped at Target, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and lived in an apartment that, while cozy and clean, wasn't exactly the type of place you'd find in luxury magazines. After they left, I walked through the house I had grown up in, the one I'd secretly owned. I poured myself another glass of wine and retreated to the study, where I did my real work. Hidden behind a false panel in the wall were the tools of my real trade: secure laptops, multiple phones, and filing cabinets filled with investment documents. For the last 3 years, I had quietly built an empire while everyone assumed I was just a lonely single mother, struggling to make ends meet. Rebecca called me a pest, and in doing so, she had revealed more about herself than she realized. Tonight, she would learn exactly what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman. I opened my laptop and checked my private banking portal. The numbers staring back at me, 63,489,762, were known to only 3 people in the world: me, my financial advisor, and my accountant. Not bad for a pest. The money hadn't come from inheritance, lottery tickets, or any dramatic windfall you might see in movies. It had come from patience, intelligence, and the complete invisibility that came with being a middle-aged woman nobody took seriously. It all began when I was 26, freshly divorced from Lucas's father and working as a secretary at a small investment firm in downtown Chicago. The men in the office treated me like furniture, someone who answered phones, filed papers, and brought coffee without ever being seen as a person. They discussed deals and opportunities right in front of me, as if I wasn't even there. But I was listening. I was learning. I was taking careful notes. I started small 50 here, 100 there, investing in companies they were buzzing about before the information became public. Nothing illegal, just taking advantage of the fact that they forgot I had ears and a brain. When I made my first 1,000 in profit, I nearly cried. When I hit 10,000, I quit the firm and started managing my own portfolio full-time. That was 33 years ago. Since then, I had made strategic investments in tech companies that nobody had heard of, bought real estate in neighborhoods before they gentrified, and acquired stocks in startups that became household names. I had been patient, methodical, and, most importantly, completely invisible. I lived modestly, not because I couldn't afford better, but because being underestimated was the most powerful weapon I'd ever wielded. Let people see the small apartment, the old car, the Target clothes. Let them assume I was struggling, irrelevant, a pest on the periphery of their successful lives. It made moments like tonight so much more satisfying. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in months. Patricia Wong, my financial advisor and one of the few people who knew the truth about my situation. "Margot?" Patricia's voice was surprised. It was after 10 p.m. on a weeknight. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," I said, settling deeper into my chair. "But I need to make some moves. It's time to stop playing defense." Patricia had been managing my investments for 15 years. She'd watched my portfolio grow from 6 figures to 7, then to 8, and she'd never once asked why I lived like I was broke. "What are you thinking?" she asked, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. Patricia loved it when I decided to be aggressive. "Real estate acquisitions," I said. "I want to buy some properties in Lincoln Park, maybe Lakeview apartment buildings specifically. You could say that?" I took a sip of wine and smiled at the thought of Rebecca's face when the eviction notice arrived. "I'm going into the landlord business in a more serious way," I continued. "Budget $5 million to start. Cash purchases through shell companies. I want everything untraceable to me personally." There was a pause. "Margot, that's a significant move," Patricia said, her voice cautious. "Are you sure you want to liquidate that much of your portfolio?" "Positive," I said. "And Patricia, I also need you to recommend a private investigator. Someone discreet, someone good at finding information people would prefer to keep hidden." Another pause, this one a little longer. "This isn't just about real estate, is it?" she asked, her voice low with understanding. I chuckled, surprising myself with how genuinely amused I felt. "Let's just say someone made the mistake of calling me a pest tonight. I thought I'd show them what a real pest can accomplish when she puts her mind to it." "Jesus, Margot," Patricia said, a little stunned. "What did they do to you?" "They forgot that the quiet ones are the ones you should really worry about," I replied, my tone colder than I expected. We talked for another 20 minutes, Patricia taking notes as I outlined exactly what I wanted. By the time I hung up, the wheels were already in motion. Come Monday morning, I would be the proud owner of 3 apartment buildings in prime Chicago neighborhoods, all purchased through holding companies with names like Lakefront Property Management and Chicago Urban Investments. But real estate was just the beginning. I opened a new browser window and started researching. Rebecca Lynch, event coordinator at Pest.She Planning, graduate of Northwestern University with a degree in marketing, or so her LinkedIn profile claimed. I'd always suspected something was off about Rebecca's credentials. She had appeared in Lucas's life like a beautiful tornado, claims, and no proof, all image and no substance. She talked about her job at Pest.She Planning like she was running the company, but I noticed she never seemed to work normal hours. She never brought work home and never stressed about deadlines the way people with real responsibilities do. Time to dig deeper. I spent the next 2 hours building a comprehensive dossier on my daughter-in-law's social media profiles, employment history, education records, financial information. The picture that emerged was exactly what I expected. A beautiful lie wrapped in designer clothes and fake confidence. Her degree from Northwestern was a weekend certificate course in event planning, not the full-fledged marketing degree she'd claimed. Her position at Pest.She Planning? A part-time assistant who'd been inflating her title and responsibilities for years. And her financial situation? Well, it was worse than I'd imagined. Rebecca Lynch was drowning in debt. Designer handbags and shoes that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, charged to credit cards that were already maxed out. The only reason she was staying afloat was Lucas's steady income, and the fact that their living expenses were artificially low thanks to the rental deal I had arranged for them. But that was about to change. I closed my laptop and finished my wine, feeling more energized than I had in years. Tomorrow would bring the eviction notice, delivered by a uniformed process server to their door at precisely 9:00 a.m. But that was just the opening move. Real revenge wasn't about dramatic confrontations or public humiliation. Real revenge was about patience, preparation, and the slow, methodical dismantling of someone's carefully constructed life. Rebecca had called me a pest. She had dismissed me as irrelevant, unproductive, meaningless. She'd done it in front of my family, in my own home, while eating my food and drinking my wine. She was about to learn that the most dangerous enemies are the ones you don't see coming. I walked to my bedroom and opened the walk-in closet that looked small and ordinary from the outside, but contained a secret that would shock anyone who truly knew me. Behind a false back panel were the tools of my real trade: multiple laptops, secure phones, filing cabinets full of investment documents, and a wall safe that contained enough cash and securities to buy and sell people like Rebecca 100 times over. This was my war room, the place where I'd built my empire while everyone thought I was just a lonely single mother, living modestly in an unremarkable apartment. I pulled out a legal pad and began making lists, phone calls to make, people to contact, dominoes to arrange before I started pushing them over. By the time I went to bed at 2 a.m., I had a complete battle plan. Rebecca Lynch had no idea what she'd just unleashed. She had insulted a pest, not knowing that this particular pest had enough money, connections, and sheer vindictive creativity to destroy her life 6 different ways before breakfast. But I wasn't going to destroy her quickly. That would be too easy, too merciful. I was going to take her apart piece by piece, systematically and thoroughly, until she understood exactly what it meant to underestimate the wrong woman. The eviction notice was just the beginning. I woke up at 5 a.m. the next morning, feeling more alive than I had in months. There's something invigorating about having a purpose, especially when that purpose involves the complete and total destruction of someone who thoroughly deserves it. My first call was to Patricia, who answered on the second ring despite the early hour. "The wire transfers are already processing," she said without preamble. "You'll have ownership of all 3 properties by noon today. The shell companies are established, the paperwork is filed, and your legal team is standing by." "Perfect," I said, sipping my coffee. "What about the investigator?" "Marcus Chun, former FBI. Now he runs his own firm. He specializes in deep background investigations for high net worth individuals who need to protect themselves. Completely discreet, completely thorough." I smiled, stirring sugar into my coffee. "Send me his number. I have a project for him." My second call was to James Morrison, my attorney of 12 years and the only lawyer I knew who understood that sometimes the best legal strategy was to completely overwhelm your opponent before they even realized they were in a fight. "Margot," James said, sounding pleased to hear from me. "Patricia mentioned you might be calling. Something about an eviction, among other things." "Yeah," I said. "I need a formal notice of termination of tenancy prepared. I want it served this morning." There was a pause. "That's unusually aggressive for you. What's the situation?" I gave James a condensed version of the previous evening's events, watching the sun rise over Chicago as office workers rushed to catch their trains, parents walked children to school, and delivery trucks navigated the narrow streets, all of them going about their normal lives, unaware that 3 blocks away, Rebecca Lynch was about to have the worst day of her life. "Jesus Christ, Margot," James said when I finished. "She actually called you a pest at your own dinner table?" "She did," I said, my smile widening. "And now she's going to learn exactly what this particular pest is capable of." "I'll have the papers ready within the hour," he said, then hesitated. "But are you sure you want to move this fast? It's going to be a shock to your son." I'd been thinking about Lucas all morning. My gentle, sensitive son, who'd inherited my brain but his father's soft heart. He was going to be collateral damage in this war, and that hurt more than anything Rebecca could say to me. But sometimes you have to hurt the people you love to save them from themselves, I said softly. "Michael will understand eventually," I added. "Right now, he's so blinded by that woman that he can't see what she really is." James was silent for a moment, then replied, "Your call. I'll have the process server there by 9 a.m. My third call was to Marcus Chun. "Miss Robbie," he said, in a voice that suggested he'd already been briefed by Patricia, "I understand you need a comprehensive background investigation." "I need everything," I said. "Employment history, financial records, personal relationships, social media activity, shopping habits. I want to know things about Rebecca Lynch that she doesn't even remember herself. I want a preliminary report by this afternoon and a complete dossier by the end of the week. Money is no object." "I like clients who say that," Marcus replied. "I'll get started immediately." By 8:30 a.m., I was dressed and ready for the show. I had chosen my outfit carefully, a simple black dress that could pass for designer, but had actually come from Target. Modest jewelry and comfortable flats. The goal was to look exactly how they expected, a middle-aged woman of modest means who had somehow stumbled into property ownership. Let them think it was luck or accident. The truth would be so much more devastating. I positioned myself at a coffee shop directly across from Prestige Planning's downtown office. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I had a perfect view of their reception area and the elevator bank that served the building's upper floors. My anonymous email had been delivered to their HR department at 6 a.m. By now, someone would have read it, probably forwarded it to management, and begun the process of verifying the information I'd provided. Corporate bureaucracy moves slowly, but when fraud is involved, it moves surprisingly fast. I ordered a latte and settled in to wait. At 9:15 a.m., I spotted Rebecca emerging from the elevator. Even in the midst of her impending disaster, she looked stunning. She had managed to put together an outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Black designer suit, shoes that clicked authoritatively against the marble floor, her hair and makeup flawless. She walked into the prestige planning office with the confidence of someone who thought she owned the world. That confidence lasted exactly 23 minutes. At 9:38 a.m., Rebecca reappeared in the lobby, but this time she wasn't walking with authority. She was being escorted by a security guard, holding a small cardboard box that I assumed contained her personal belongings. Her face was pale, her makeup smudged, her carefully curated persona shattered. She had been fired. I watched her stand on the sidewalk outside the building, clutching her box, looking around like she wasn't sure where to go next. She pulled out her phone, probably to call someone, but after a few moments, she put it away without dialing. Who could she call? Lucas was at work, probably still furious about the eviction. Her parents didn't know about her fake persona and wouldn't understand her problems. Her affair partner? He wouldn't be available during business hours without raising suspicions with his wife. For maybe the first time in her adult life, Rebecca Lynch was truly alone. I finished my latte and walked home, feeling a satisfaction that was both complete and slightly unsettling. I had destroyed someone's livelihood with an anonymous email, and I felt nothing but pleasure about it. But then I remembered her voice from Saturday night. "Get a job and stop being a pest," she had said. She wanted me to understand my place in the world. Now she was getting a lesson in hers. My phone buzzed as soon as I entered my apartment. Lucas was calling again. I sighed, preparing myself for the inevitable questions. I answered the call with a calm voice. "Mom," Lucas said, sounding desperate. "Courtney just got fired. They said someone sent her company information about her background, and when they investigated, they found out she was lying about her qualifications." "That's unfortunate," I said coolly, settling into my favorite chair and looking out at the city skyline through my window. "Mom," Lucas continued, his voice trembling, "did you have something to do with this?" I paused for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air. He had a right to know, but I wasn't sure how much he could handle at once. "Yes," I finally replied. "She called me a pest. She insulted me in my own home, eating my food, drinking my wine, living in my apartment, all while treating me like I didn't matter. Well, I've decided to show her exactly what a pest can do." "Mom, this isn't just about a dinner argument. She's lost her job. She's probably panicking. And now I have to explain this to everyone at work." "Lucas, sweetheart, I've been supporting both of you for 3 years now, without you even knowing it," I said, my voice softer now, but still firm. "I did it to protect you from her. She's a manipulator, and you couldn't see it. Sometimes people need to lose everything before they can wake up. You'll understand eventually." I could hear him exhale deeply on the other end of the line, processing the revelation. "Mom, are you sure you're okay with this? The way she's reacting, it's like you've destroyed everything." "It's not about destruction, Lucas. It's about consequences. You can't just walk all over people and expect no one to fight back. Trust me, she had it coming." "Yeah, I get it now," he replied quietly, but I could sense the pain in his voice. "But it hurts to see her like this." "I know, darling," I said, my tone softening. "But you need to trust me when I say she will never change. She's broken, and she doesn't even see it." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "I know, Mom, I guess. I just didn't want to see it." "I understand," I replied. "But sometimes the people we love need to see the truth, even if it's painful." By the time I finished my conversation with Lucas, it was almost noon. My plans were already set into motion, but I needed to make a few more calls. I sat down at my desk and opened the secure laptop I kept hidden. I quickly navigated to the private banking portal. The numbers there were something only 3 people in the world knew: me, my financial advisor, and my accountant. I smiled as I saw the balance. 62,364. It had taken years of careful planning, but I had built an empire from nothing, and I wasn't going to stop now. I picked up the phone and made my next call. "Patricia," I said, once she answered, "let's move forward. I need you to get me the paperwork on all of the properties we discussed earlier. Transfers, titles, the whole package. I also want you to start making arrangements for me to meet with the private investigator. His findings are going to be crucial." "Got it, Margot," Patricia replied, her tone firm and supportive. "I'll get things moving. What about the next steps? Are we going to proceed with the exposure?" "Absolutely," I said, my voice steady. "Everything is in motion. By the end of today, she'll know exactly what she's dealing with. The next stage will be much more permanent." I hung up and took a moment to think. There was still more to be done, and I had to be patient, methodical. The slow unraveling of Rebecca's world had only just begun. Later that day, I received the first update. Patricia texted me. "The property acquisitions are complete. You're now the owner of 3 prime buildings in Chicago. Real estate portfolio is set." I couldn't help but smile. The first step was done. I looked out the window, watching the traffic rush by, people going about their business as if the world hadn't just shifted. Rebecca, for all her confidence and beauty, had no idea that her world was about to implode. It was almost poetic how easy it was to remain invisible while quietly building something much larger than anyone could imagine. But I wasn't finished yet. I had to make sure she would never hurt anyone again. The next morning, I got up early and reviewed the latest updates from Marcus Chun. His report on Rebecca was everything I'd hoped for. It painted a picture of a woman who had built her life on lies and manipulation, covering up her deceit with an image of wealth and beauty, but the cracks were beginning to show, and Marcus was a meticulous investigator. He had pieced together everything I needed to know. Rebecca had been using falsified employment references for years. She'd convinced her previous employers to give glowing recommendations, fabricating positions and responsibilities. Her resume was nothing but a patchwork of lies. She had inflated her income, claiming a salary far above what she actually made. And it wasn't just her career that was a mess. Her finances were a disaster. She was in deep debt, unable to keep up with credit card payments, and relying on Lucas to maintain her lifestyle. But what really stood out were the gaps in her history. Short-term jobs, unexplained absences, and a pattern of cutting ties before things could get too serious. It was like watching someone who had perfected the art of using others to get ahead, never once thinking about the consequences. I closed the report and felt a surge of satisfaction. Rebecca had underestimated me. She thought I was just a quiet, unassuming woman who didn't matter. Now, I was about to show her how wrong she was. I picked up my phone and sent Marcus a text. "Great work. Let's make sure everything is in place by the time she gets the eviction notice." Then I made another call to my attorney, James Morrison. He answered immediately, as I knew he would. "Margot," he said, "the eviction papers are ready to be served. We're good to go." "Perfect," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "And the next part? How soon can we begin?" "I'll have everything filed by the end of the day," he assured me. "But I have to ask, are you sure about moving this fast? It's going to shake things up with Lucas." "I know," I said, my voice calm. "But sometimes the people we love need to see the truth, even if it hurts them. This has to be done." James didn't respond immediately, and I knew he understood. He had always known that I was a woman who took control, who didn't let things slip through my fingers. "I'll keep you posted," he said, before hanging up. That afternoon, I walked to the window of my apartment, looking out at the city I'd spent years building my life in. It was a beautiful view, one that many people would kill to have. But to me, it was just a backdrop to the life I had created, the life that nobody could touch. Rebecca thought she could just walk in, take what she wanted, and leave. But I wasn't going to let her. No, I was going to make sure she learned a lesson she'd never forget. By the time the sun set that evening, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. Everything was falling into place. The pieces were set, and the game was nearly over. I received a call from Lucas later that night. His voice was tight, filled with disbelief. "Mom, they served the eviction notice," he said. "Rebecca's gone. She's a mess. She's packing up right now." "I'm glad to hear it," I replied, my voice steady, though I could feel a rush of satisfaction. "I don't know what to say." "It's just so much," he said, sounding like he wanted to cry, but holding it together. "I didn't know she was capable of this." "Sometimes the truth hits hard, darling. You'll be all right. You're stronger than you think." There was a long silence, and then he spoke again, this time with a new edge to his voice, a clarity I hadn't heard before. "I get it now, Mom. I see it. You didn't just protect me from her. You protected me from myself." "I did what I had to do, Lucas. Sometimes the people we love need to see things clearly, even if it's painful." The following days were quiet, but the ripple effect of my actions was undeniable. The eviction notice had shaken Rebecca, but what came next would be the final blow. The full exposure of her lies, her manipulation, and the web she'd spun for years. It wasn't just about destroying her. It was about making sure she couldn't do this to anyone else. Every man she'd targeted, every life she'd ruined, every lie she'd spun, everything was coming to light. People would know exactly who Rebecca Lynch was, and her carefully constructed image would be shattered forever. I watched as everything unfolded, knowing that I had taken control of my life in a way I never had before. I had been underestimated for too long, but now the world would know the truth. And for once, I was in charge.